I am here talking with author Kris Loomis. Thank you so much for being here today, Kris.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So I'm trying to think of exactly when we met, because I've never actually met you in person, but I was thinking it's maybe 2 years, maybe even more than that now. I can't remember.
At least 2 years.
Yeah, about that. So I've been following you for a while, and I'm just amazed at how much you've accomplished and the number of things you've published. And so that's why I wanted to talk with you today. So when it comes to your projects, do you have a system where you will plan your year out, or do you just sort of see what comes up?
Combination of both. I try not to go too far out in advance or I get distracted. I start thinking about all of those projects instead of the ones I have going on. So instead of saying I'm going to do this in this time frame, what I tend to do is decide on the projects that I want to work on. And then once I finish one project, I will kind of be drawn to one of those and I'll kind of gravitate toward that. Like with this, I just finished a short story collection and I turned to that because I had just finished a novel and I wasn't ready to start another long fiction project. So I don't like, well, let me put it this way. I like variety. I write both nonfiction, fiction. I have a lot of personal eclectic taste, and I think that's reflected in my writing. So I like shaking things up as I go. So I do have projects that I know are in the pipeline. I just don't really necessarily know which one is going to be next, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like what you said about, wanting the variety, and I think that's great because, of course, you can get tired of working on one project and it's nice to have a break and something else
Exactly.
to go to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I know that you are very busy also as a yoga teacher and a piano teacher. Do you have a daily writing routine, or how do you fit in your writing?
I teach privately, so I'm lucky in that I really can't start that work until after kids are out of school and after adults get off of work. So that work of mine starts after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm lucky that I do have most mornings free that I can write. It hasn't always been this way. My husband was retired for a while and he was underfoot a lot, but he recently went back to work. So it's been a little easier for me to be more consistent with my writing. So that has been nice. I write best in the morning when it comes to putting new words on the page. But as you know, as a writer, there are a lot of other things you have to take care of besides the actual writing. So after lunch, I spend that hour or two that I have before I start my other work and work on marketing or, writing emails, things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I like how you've got, like certain times for everything. I think that really helps.
Well, it does, because my brain automatically, about, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, it just kind of flips into this writer mode and I just kind of get going. And then about 11:30, it starts flipping into something else. And I know that I need to wrap it up. And then after lunch, I don't really worry about that side of it. I worry more about the business side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's working for me right now.
Yeah. And actually, I apologize. I should have said this at the beginning. So as a self-published author, you have a lot of things to take care of, like you said, about the business side. It really is a business that you are in, this business of promoting your books as well and not just writing them. And so you know that you write the best in the morning. Is that something that you always knew, or did you have to figure that out as you went?
I had to figure that out. When I first started writing, I was living in Ecuador and my schedule was very different. So I did a lot of writing in the early afternoon, which was fine. And I did it, but I'm not as sharp at that time of day. I tend to get a little sleepy. I've just had lunch and, so I took the time that I had, which I think is important because we can make excuses, all day long about, well, I can't write then. If the only time I have to write is at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I will write then. But I just know me personally, my most productive time is in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important to figure that out, I think. I know I'm still working on that myself. So,
It takes a while. It takes a while to figure that out. And also it can change. You know, I've had certain aspects, like as you said, I teach piano. I'm a pianist. And so I also have an active practice schedule to keep my chops up so that I can teach these other people. And I used to practice best, you know, on the days that I didn't have students around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My brain works best for piano now after 6. So it's just, it really depends. And I think we change and we have to look out for those changes as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So you have, in 2018, actually, you published 2 novels, which I think that in itself is an amazing feat. But not only did you publish the 2 novels, you also published a nonfiction book.
Right.
And am I missing anything? Did you publish another collection?
No, no, it was 3. I finished the short story collection, The 100 Tiny Tales. I finished that in December of last year, but I didn't publish it until just last week.
Okay. So what I loved about your novel planning process, so you have a little sticky note trick that you use. Could you share that with me?
Well, when I started writing fiction, long fiction, I didn't know that much about structure. I knew enough from watching movies that there is a structure. I know enough from being a musician that all music has a structure to it. So I knew when I started long fiction that I would need to follow a structure. So I used the book, The Story Template by Amy Dearden. And in that, she kind of goes through the 3-act structure. And in the 3-act structure, there are major plot points that for, you know, most works you need to hit. And we all know that you need a hook, you need an inciting incident, you know, something's got to happen at the midpoint, you know, you're going to have your climax, you're going to have your resolution and all these other little things that happen along the way. And so I kind of figured out that I can get where I want to go better if I know where I'm going. So when I start plotting, I hit those first. I decide what my major plot points are going to be, and I write them down on a sticky note and I stick it on the wall. And I have each act and I have each plot point that belongs in that act. And then I decide how my characters are going to arrive at that point. And then the other little sticky notes appear. And so that's basically how I do it. I do better when I can see the big picture. And when I put all this on the wall, it's nice because I can step back and get the big picture. But I can also step really close and look at each individual scene. So this works for me. Not every writer is a planner, but I am. That's how my brain processes things. So it's worked out pretty well for the last 2 projects.
I like how you say you can step back, but also step close. And having those main ideas to start with, I think just makes it so much less overwhelming. Because, you know, when you're first starting and even the first novel and you just have no idea where to start. Yeah. And I also love the color coding, like I'm a very visual person, so I like seeing the color coded sticky notes up on the wall. I try to use recipe cards, but I found that having them just in a stack, it wasn't the same for me as actually having like a board where you could put these sticky notes up.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's having them flat does nothing for me. If they're up like this, yes, it just it clicks.
Yeah, it almost starts to bring the story to life. And then I also love how you say, how are those characters going to get there? Like that's a really key thing for putting in your details. I love that. So I'm also going to share your blog post that you wrote on that. So if anyone wants to go and reference that when they're plotting their novel, they can do that. So another thing that I love about your novels, and especially The Murder of Leopold Beckenbauer, is your characters. So I found that I loved your characters in The Sinking of Bethany Ann Crane as well. But for some reason in your murder mystery, the characters they were just so fun to me. Like I just really loved reading about them and their little quirks and things like that. So do you have a process for character development as well?
I do. It's pretty simple. Some decisions I make up front, and then other decisions happen as I'm writing. And it starts on a card. So basically, when I start, I do like for a character to have a name. it may not be a full name, but I like to go ahead and decide on a name so that I can call them something instead of just the main character or something. I decide their age and their gender, ethnicity, if that, plays into it. The story role, what is their role in the story? What do they bring to the table? Because if they don't bring anything to the table, I have no use for them. So I decide that up front. If they have an occupation or whether they are going to school, I like knowing that. I like to know where they come from and where they currently reside. Instead of going deep into their physical characteristics, I pick one, and I want it to be unique. So do they have a mole on their nose, or do they always wear a goatee? Are they graying around the temple? Just something that if you saw them across a crowded room, you would say, oh, the guy with the gray temples. Something that you can identify quickly, that character. And then the other characteristics come into play as I start writing. I also like to give them all a personal quirk, like you were talking about the quirky characters in Leopold Beckenbauer, and Kumar, who always has superhero t-shirts. Like, that's his quirk. That came very early on. And once that comes on, that helps me really grasp his character, and then things spring from that. So I like having a quirk. And I also like to know what they're best at and what they're really suck at. Are they really good at computer programming but horrible at basketball? Because as the story develops, there may be an opportunity for them to show their skills or for them to bumble. So I like knowing those things as well. And then, of course, what they want. What does that character want in this period of time? So that's how it starts. I keep it very, very simple. I know some writers have very detailed character studies that they do before they begin writing. I tried that, and I found it very distracting. I found that kind of like research, you can get so wrapped up in it that you don't write. So I try to hit the highlights and then get to writing, and then everything else kind of fills in.
Mm-hmm. So with Kumar, then, did his superhero t-shirt quirk come out as you were writing, or was that something that you started with?
That's something I started with.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
he's one of my favorite characters.
he was a lot of fun to get to know. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, he is really fun. So I also like that you say about the purpose of the character in the book. And you mentioned that in your book about revision and how, if they don't have a purpose, then really what's the point of having them there? And I think that that's a really good point. And yeah, that really stood out to me when I read your revision book as well.
Thanks.
So now you are working on a paranormal story. So how did you decide that was going to be your next project?
Well, this has been in my bag of projects for a couple of years. I have a cousin, and she has been a great supporter of my writing. But once I kind of put out my collection of short stories, and then after The Sinking of Bethany Crane came out, she said, I love ghost stories. You're going to have to write me a ghost story. And so every so often she would send me a message and say, have you started my ghost story yet? And so I love kind of psychological horror ghost story type things. And it's in the back of my mind, I always wondered if I could do that. So it was just time. It was time for me to go ahead and explore this project. And I'm having a great time with it. I'm halfway through the first draft. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to scare one of my characters and to get her deeper and deeper into her own psyche and have her freak out and all these little things that happen to her along the way. And it's kind of, I know where it's going, but I have to kind of hold myself back. It's got to be like a slow build. You can't give her all the stuff at the beginning. So it's been a good exercise for me in that regard as well.
I love that. It's almost like a challenge, you know, that she asked you to write this story. It's like, oh, well, I got to write this story now.
Exactly. I was like, well, I kind of hemmed and hawed because I never really considered writing horror. But I am having a really good time with it. And I chose to write this as a novella because I wanted the focus to be on one plot line. And where, you know, a lot of people think that a novella is a short novel, but it's really not. A novel, you do have multiple plot lines going on. You have a main one, but you have other ones as well. A novella gives you the chance to really delve deeply into one storyline. And it tends to be more character driven. And so it suits what I'm trying to do with this story. So this has been fun.
I can't wait to read it. It already sounds good. And the way you light up talking about it, I know it's going to be good.
It's fun.
So through following you, I learned what a drabble is. Could you share with anyone watching what a drabble is?
Yes. A drabble is a short story that is written with only 100 words, not 101, not 99, but exactly 100 words. And I had no idea what a drabble was a couple of years ago, but someone in one of my writing groups challenged the group to write a drabble, and this was right before Christmas. And the thing that we had to include was the words "the night before Christmas." So I wrote a drabble that included the words "the night before Christmas," and I titled it "She Was Going Dancing." And I ended up being very pleased with that particular story. And that was that. And then I continued writing other things, and I got back to my long fiction. After this last novel, though, I really needed a break. And so I think I mentioned before, I took this opportunity to explore something different. And the 100 word stories really just came about for me taking a break, because I still wanted to write, but I didn't want to get into the, day-to-day grind of, 3 hours on the first draft trying to get so many words and all that. I needed just a mental break. And this gave me that. And I think a lot of writers should experiment with it, because it teaches you economy. It teaches you how to find exactly what has to be said in the story and what can be left out, because we can leave a lot of things out. So it taught me a lot. It was an excellent experiment for me, and I'm really pleased with the result.
I think the Christmas drabble that you did was the first one that I read. And I remember when I read it, there was so much going on in 100 words. I was just so impressed, and like I thought I have to try this one day, because it was just, there's even like the unexpectedness of the ending and everything, and it was it's so awesome. So Tiny Tales is your collection of 100 drabbles, so 100 stories of 100 words. And today we're talking, it's January 18th, 2019, so it is out now.
Yes. It is.
And so people can grab it on Amazon along with all of your other books, which I highly recommend. So you have a collection of short stories that we haven't talked about. The Monster in the Closet, is that right?
Yes, The Monster in the Closet and Other Stories. And that's a collection of 15 short stories. And they're divided into 5 sections. So 3 stories happen in a park, 3 stories happen in a cafe, 3 stories happen in a funeral home, and some other places. So that was a lot of fun too. So it has a kind of an overall theme, and then broken down, and they're more normal size short stories, not microfiction.
Right. And also I think I can't remember if I've read the whole collection. I've definitely read the Park collection and the Monster in the Closet collection, and loved them. And actually, I think that was maybe the first thing of yours that I read was your short stories. So you also have, as far as nonfiction goes, you have 30 Days in Keto, which is your travelogue in the time that you spent in Ecuador. And you have your meditation and yoga for busy people. So 2 separate books, which I also highly recommend. The thing I like about those is they're quick reads. So if somebody wants to start implementing your tips for meditating and yoga, they can read it and start doing it right away, which I love. Yeah. So congratulations on all of the things that you have published to date.
Thank
I hope
you.
that I hope there isn't any, is there any that I missed mentioning?
Well, I did have the essay collection after Namaste, where I just kind of,
Right.
it's a
Yes.
collection of musings where I just kind of go through how yoga has affected my life off the mat, because so much emphasis is placed on what yoga does for you when you're on the mat. And so this kind of explores how I find it creeping into my life at really good moments. And it shows kind of an evolution of my journey, my yoga journey. So that's the other nonfiction book I have out.
And that one recently didn't you get recognized on Amazon for that?
They chose that book to be included in their Prime Reading program.
Right.
So through March, I guess the middle of March this year, 2019, if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can download the book for free.
Excellent. All right. So where is the best place for people to find you if they would like to read some of your books?
You can look me up on Amazon and find my Amazon author page. I have a website, krisloomis.com. I can also be found on Medium, which is a blogging platform for writers of all stripes, really. I'm on that platform. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and my handle on all of those is Kris Loomis. So it's pretty easy.
Perfect. So I will drop some of those links below the video so people can easily find you. And thank you again for being here today and sharing your awesome tips with us. And I wish you the best of luck in 2019. I can't wait to see what you publish this year.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me.